Hi, I'm Dr. Janice Morrow. Thanks for joining us for another episode of American Mood Swings, where we talk about the brain and all things related to mental health. Welcome. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of American Mood Swings, where we talk about the brain and all things mental health. I have today, my guest today is April Barbosa, who has a nonprofit called Justice for Rosalia, which is her daughter who passed away a few years ago as the result of a domestic violence incident. So I'm so grateful that she's here and to share her story and to help empower other women or people who might be in a similar situation. So thank you so much, April, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Um, well, let's just start off talking about your beautiful daughter.
Well, Rosaura was like the light in the world of our family. She was always with a big old smile. She believed in just the closeness of family. I wasn't much of a holiday celebrator back in those days. And she was the one that was always, when the holidays came around, Mom, we got to do this. Mom, we got to do that. We got to invite this person.
Oh,
And she would be the one that would put it all together and and just make it all happen. She was so loving and kind. She got good grades. She wanted to go to Harvard for a long time. She wanted to be, was it a doctor? I think she wanted to be. Yeah, she did. She wanted to be a doctor. And then we ended up getting Gizmo. And Gizmo like became her son. Gizmo was like her everything. Like she took Gizmo with her everywhere.
was that a dog?
And
Is that a dog?
yeah, Gizmo's her dog. Yeah, he's a little white Chiweenie.
Okay.
And yeah, so she ended up getting a job while she was still going to school, and she was around 17 around that time, and she decided that she wanted to take a break from school. She said school was overwhelming her. She wanted to take a break. And um, even back then, I knew like mental health was something that we had to address, and so I said, okay, well, if it's too much stress for you, take a break, but you're gonna go back. So she took a break, started working. Well, tragically, she never went back, but she Gizmo was just her everything. Like she would work and then she would go buy them matching outfits. She would buy them matching outfits. They would dress alike, and she would take him to get his nails done at the groomer and get bathed and everything. And then the same day they would go to the salon and she'd get her nails done. So they were like everywhere together.
I love that. I love it. That's so sweet.
Yeah, and everybody knew them because they'd say, "Oh, look, there goes Rosada and her little dog and their matching outfits."
Well,
Yeah, she was just amazing.
and did she have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have two other children. At that time, my son was 15. He's 21 now. My daughter, I'm pretty sure she was 20, my older daughter. Now she's 26. Yeah, so I still have my two other children. And now I have a grandson too. My older daughter, had a baby. He's gonna be 4. He's gonna be 5 actually.
Oh, so right around, was he born?
He
Did
was born a year and 2 weeks to the day of a year of her passing.
Okay. Well, I'd love to talk about Rosalia. So she passed away as the result of a domestic violence. What I'm curious about is like when she started dating this gentleman, as a mother, like were there any when you first met him? I'm asking this because one time, I have some friends in San Diego. They're like my second family, and they have the granddaughter whose name is Danielle. But she's married now with a baby, everything's good. But years ago, she dated this guy for a few years, and he did end up he didn't hit her. He beat up someone else, another woman, when they were broken up. But the very first time, and her family, everybody loved him. And the very first time I met him, I had like heebie-jeebies. I thought he was a sleazy, phony. I just didn't like the guy. And I like most people. I just all the feelers, the warning signs. She was with him for a few years. So I'm wondering if you as a mother, like this gentleman that you're, well, I won't call him a gentleman, this man who took your daughter's life, did did he start out as a charmer, you know, and kind, or did he start out, did you have any feeling like when you first met him, like he's not a, I don't like him
Um, my husband never liked him. My
right away?
husband had bad feelings about him. Me, I just seen him as this shy guy. He never had nothing that was going to be a red flag to me. And, he was just, and he was a part of our family. He was somebody that we knew a lot, that was always at our house, that was, we loved him. He called me mom. He called my husband dad. He was a part of our family. Um, and there were no symptoms of domestic violence. There was nothing at all. And so it was a shock, a horrible, horrible shock to us. We never would have assumed she was in danger. I mean,
I didn't know that. So I was
yeah,
thinking there were probably months of fighting. No, there wasn't. So they got in.
no, there wasn't.
Well,
No, not at all.
why don't you talk about what happened then that day? And then we're not going to stay on that topic too long, so we can talk about the mission of your nonprofit and how you want to help other women. But so yeah, I guess I misunderstood. I thought that there were, okay, so what happened?
Okay, so she had broke up with him. Well, she had went for a week to California, and I kind of got the feeling that he was a little bit jealous of her, that she got to go and he didn't, because he had to work, and so he had to take care of Gizmo at home with because they had their apartment together. And while she was gone, I mean, she called me all the time, texted me all the time. I remember telling her, Rosaura, come on, you're in the happiest place in the world. What are you doing talking to
Text-
me?
Oh my
But that's who
God.
she was. Yeah, that's who she was. She was a mama's girl. She always wanted to talk to me, always wanted to tell me what she was doing. Like I would So the night she came back a day early from California, could be it was her dog's birthday, so she had to be back that day. She's like, I gotta come back.
Okay.
So she came back a day early and she went to her apartment. She went in and she seen that he had neglected her dog the whole time she was gone. Like he didn't feed him. There was like mess everywhere. It was hot. He hadn't turned on the AC or nothing, and it was May, in Arizona, that's bad weather. Gizmo was lethargic. And she called me and she says, Mom, I'm breaking up with him. I'm not putting up with this. If he can't treat my son good, then he doesn't deserve to be with me. Gizmo's my world. And, and I supported her 100% in that. I said, if that's what you feel is right, then you do that. And she says, okay. So I said, do you want me to go and get you? She says, no, I'm going to stay here. And because the guy was at work, she says, I'm going to wait for him to come home and we're going to talk. And I said, okay. So that's what happened. And then she she called me at like 9 or 10 at night and said, or no, it wasn't even that late. It was like 8. She said, "Well, can you come pick me up? We're done talking." So I went over there, me and my husband, and she came out. She was holding Gizmo, and he was following her. And he gets in the car, he shuts the door, and he comes up to me and he says, "He's leaving me." And I said, "I know, I'm sorry." I said, "But we'll." I said, "Give her a couple days." And then you guys can talk. I was like, just, it's going to be okay. I kept telling him it's going to be okay. And then we left. And that night she was tired. She just says, I'm so tired, Mom. And I had a long week. Um, I'm going to go to bed. So she went, slept in her old room. And then in the morning we woke up and I remember my husband opened our bedroom door and she was coming out of her bedroom door and he hugged her in the hallway. And we were telling her how nice it was to have her back in the house again because she hadn't lived with us for a while. And we were just talking about how nice it was and planning for her to move back in. Like I told her, we're gonna get you a new bed. We don't need the old bed from your apartment. And she just says, okay, Mom. And then she gave me this long hug. It was a hug I'll never forget. It was just this long hug, and she gave her dad a long hug, and I told her, I said, I said, do you want us to go with you so you can talk to him and we could just be there for support? And she says, no, Mom, I'm an adult. I got this. And that was her thing. I got this. I'm an adult. So I said, okay. I said, are you sure? I said, we can wait in the parking lot. And she says, no. She's like, I'm a grown up. I can do this. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. And I said, okay. I was like, um, she's like, I'm just gonna talk to him and I'm gonna get my stuff and then I'm gonna come back. And I said, okay. I said, but I just kept telling her, well, if you need me to go, if you need us to go, we'll go. And no, she didn't. So we we dropped her off and she walked into her apartment. Um, and we left. And that was like maybe like 9 o'clock in the morning. And
Okay.
then about 11:30, I texted her. I messaged her on Messenger because she didn't have service at that time. Um, so I messaged her and I said, "Are you okay?" And she says, "Yeah, we're still talking." And at exactly 12:05, she messaged me, "Come get me." And that was the last message I got from her. So of course it took us 6 minutes to get to the apartment. Um, and we knocked on the door. There was no answer. We like tried to listen to see if we could hear anything in there. Didn't hear nothing. Um, I messaged her over and over again. Where are you? What's going on? I called her. I called him. Nothing at all. So I finally told her, I said, I'm giving you 45 minutes and then I'm calling the cops. I said, I don't know where you're at. And you always tell me where you're at. I don't know what to do. So, and I think I was kind of in shock and unbelieving because it was just something that was so not like her that I didn't know what to do. I was in such a panic. I didn't know what to do. It was like a numbness that just settled over me. So finally, 45 minutes, I called the cops and they said, well, is there history of domestic violence? I said, no. Were they arguing? I said, no, they were talking. She never said anything about them arguing. Maybe they had a little argument last night, but today, as far as I know, there was nothing. And then they're like, well, we could do a wellness check, but it's going to take us a few hours. So I'm like, okay, well, I had no choice. So me and my husband start driving around Tucson looking for her, showing people her picture. I ended up posting a a public post on a Facebook page for like a Tucson scanner group or something about that she was missing and a picture of her and him and that we were looking for them. And it got so many comments. I couldn't even like I wasn't even paying attention because I was too busy looking for her. Then finally I had to come back home because the heat was, I had multiple sclerosis and the heat was making it act up. So we came back home so I could cool down. And around that time, around 1 o'clock was when the cop called me and said, well, we're at your daughter's apartment. So of course we drove back really quick. We met the two female officers and they were, they weren't very compassionate towards our situation. I know they deal with a lot, but they were just kind of quiet and I had to ask them to look at a picture of my daughter to see what she looked like so they could look for her. And they just did the same thing we did, knocked on the door and listened, and that was it. And then they left. So I was like, okay, well, it is what it is, or we're just gonna keep looking. Eventually, we ran out of places to look. I'd called all her friends and called everybody. By that time, it was like 6 or 7 maybe. And there was always this one lady that was around the edges of what we were doing. Like I'd see her walking in the apartment complex, or she'd be watching from down the stair the stairs and things like that. And I never really paid attention to her. But around that time we had already got picked up my son and he was with us there at the apartment. My mom was there, my sister and her husband were there. And another neighbor had brought a chair out and I sat on that chair outside my daughter's apartment, just staring at the wall because I didn't know what to do.
What time was this?
Well,
What time of
this
day?
was about 7:30 or 8 at night.
Okay.
And I kept calling 911. Please help me. I don't know what to do. They kept the operators, well, maybe she's out for a walk. It's like it's been hours. She's not out for a walk. She's not that person. They made me feel like I was an overprotective mom. They made me question my own judgment of what if I was overreacting. And then the lady that had always been walking around walked up to me and my husband with a man. And the man approached my husband and he says, I just got home from work, but my wife needed me to tell you something. She said around 1 o'clock, she saw your daughter being kicked and dragged by her hair into her apartment by her boyfriend. And so, of course, I'm just like, and I couldn't even talk to the lady. I was so just distraught over what she said. And I called 911 one more time because you think that that's what you should do. And they basically, the operators made it seem like I was lying. They wanted to talk to the neighbors. I let them talk to all the neighbors in the area because I was so just out of my brain with what to do next. And then I seen my mom walking across the walkway to the apartment with this bar, and and I knew, they weren't going to do anything. It was time for us to do something. And I said, we don't need you. And I said, we don't need you anymore. You guys didn't do anything for us. We don't need you. And I hung up on them. And my mom broke the window and I climbed in and I ended up finding her. And yeah, and then they got there super fast.
And
I just I at that time I did blame a lot of people, but I know that it was the one who hurt her's fault.
well, I know just from my own, how I can't imagine how you must have felt the moment someone told you that they saw what happened like several hours earlier. Because my first thought would be like, why didn't you do something? And
Yeah.
when I used to live in Hawaii, it was a long time ago. But I had never seen a domestic violence situation in person. I went to a big church. I was camping for a week with my church group. I came back to where I was staying in this really good mood, and all these people were sitting outside and said, "Oh, there's a woman." I was kind of managing a hostel place, but they said something to me like, "There's a woman inside that's being beaten up by her boyfriend." I said, "Well, why are you all sitting here? Hasn't anybody called the police?" And they were all too scared. They didn't want to get involved. I went to a
Yeah.
pay that was still when they had pay phones, and I didn't have a cell phone. It was probably like 27 years ago. But I called the police, and this lady came out and was unrecognizable. But I think she was okay. But I had never seen anybody beaten up. My experience was very different. And I think I was equally as hurt though that I mean, Hawaii's a small place. It's kind of like, and I get that people are scared, but can't you do things anonymous? I guess they're just afraid of retaliation. But
Yeah.
it's devastating though that people are. So I'm so sorry that you found her. It didn't, and how have you, well, I understand there was a lawsuit. Is that all settled and closed now, or is that still an active thing?
Yeah, it was closed. There were no grounds for it. They followed all the statutes and laws. And that gave me some peace. Just knowing that and being taught about that made me see why things were handled that way. I still wish they would have been handled differently, but if it had to be that way because they have laws and stuff that they need to follow. And
Their
so,
hands, that's kind of like a similar situation to when before in Hawaii, I had contacted a bunch of agencies in a situation, but the police, every agency's hands were tied because this person I was describing, there had not been any violence yet. And until somebody does something often, so everything, how were you then, at what point did you start justice for Rosaura? Let's move forward with that because your goal is to help other young women. So let's talk about how it started, because it's not, if you're not from a background of nonprofit, here you are, you've just lost your daughter, the worst tragedy. And at what point did you say, okay, I'm going to do this? Because it's a lot of work starting a nonprofit. It's not a
yeah.
lot. So let's talk about your journey.
Okay, so I didn't originally start like thinking that I was gonna go and make changes in my community or anything like that. I was in bed.
Advocate.
Yeah, I was in bed for like 3 or 4 months and I had dropped down to like 90 pounds. I couldn't even eat anything solid. I just had given up on life completely. And then one day my son came in my room and he says, Mom, today's my first day of school, but you don't need to worry about it. I got it. And he said, well, he said, I got this. And him saying I got this reminded me of Rosada saying I got this. And it gave me the whatever it was I needed to get out of bed, because I realized that he needed me and my other daughter needed me and my husband needed me. So I got out of bed and I started doing things on my own again. And eventually I got on Facebook and I had hundreds of messages from people. Some were just offering condolences because they had seen it on the news. Others were telling me their stories of survival. And then there were a few that were in current abusive relationships that needed help and didn't know how to get help. And I was in shock and numb and still, I wanted to save my daughter. I was still in denial that it was all true. And I thought, I'm just gonna go save these people and maybe it'll help me, and but it'll help them for sure. And their parents won't have to go through this. And I started to go during the day and just go to these women's houses. And, sometimes their abuser was there too. And I would just help them get their stuff and I would take them to a hotel and help them check in and just hope for the best. And then one day, we decided to get ring cameras. And one day I was going to go help somebody and my husband saw me on the ring camera because I was so numb that I wasn't even talking to anybody about what was going on in my life anymore. I just closed myself off to everybody, including my family. So he's seen me on the ring camera and he's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I'm like, oh, this girl needs help. And I told him what was happening. He says, oh my gosh, don't go alone. And I said, I have to. He says, he's like, how did you even talk to this person? And I'm just like, well, it's this whole thing and we need to talk. I'll tell you later. So I ended up, um, actually he asked my older daughter to go with me. So my daughter went with me this when it wasn't the first time, but the first time that my family knew about what was going on. And then the next time he's like, you're not going alone. If something like this is happening, wait till I get home and we will go together. So he kind of got forced into it. And, I kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. And somehow the media heard about it. And a reporter came to me and says, well, why don't you get a nonprofit? And I said, I don't even know what that is. I only had my GED. I didn't know nothing about business stuff at all. So she explained it to me and I'm thinking, oh wow, I wouldn't be spending so much money getting these people hotel rooms, because it was hard. We would struggle when I would help these people because it would
Wow.
take money out of for food and things for us, but I couldn't say no. I couldn't
That's
say no. My
that's
poor
really beautiful.
husband
It's
would,
really beautiful to hear
it,
that it started
yeah,
with your out
it
of
was,
pocket money. Yeah, that's beautiful.
yeah, and
Beautiful.
yeah, it was a struggle, but he would just go work more hours to try to make up for it because he knew that I wasn't going to stop, and he supported it because we wish we had our daughter. Um, so I was like, okay, yeah, nonprofit, yeah, that I can do that. But so she helped me find a CPA who actually did the paperwork for me and donated the fee for the IRS. And I went and I got library books, as many library books as I could find on nonprofits, and wrote my own bylaws, did my articles of incorporation, and the IRS approved everything. So yeah,
Wow.
I was very surprised that that I could figure it out. And so I just kept going, kept going, kept going, kept going. And then we got a board, we got people that support us in all we do. They would help us raise money. It was still like we would raise like I want to say my financial person for like my she's my fundraiser person that does my fundraising a lot. She raises about $600 to $1,200 a year for us. Other than that, me and my husband provide everything. So I realized, I don't know enough. I don't know enough. I need to know more. So I enrolled in college and I got my bachelor's degree in correctional program management because I wanted to be able to rehabilitate offenders. That's what I thought I wanted to do. I thought I'm going to make my organization an organization that will focus more on offenders too, because, once we take the survivors away from the offenders go create more victims. So I just figured I would do that. But then I don't know, life has just taken me in so many different directions. Now I'm in my master's program for nonprofit management and leadership because I really want it to succeed. And we're still helping people. And we're also in the process of getting into legislation, talking to them about getting a new law started in Arizona called Sauda's Law, which is based off Bree's Law in Alaska, which makes it where all schools have to have education on healthy relationships and teen dating violence awareness. And, I think that's a very important thing. So that's what's happening now. And Justice for Rosada still has clients still going. Now we have partnerships. We have a partnership with one of the biggest domestic violence shelters and nonprofits in Southern Arizona. So
And
making it slowly but
I,
surely.
I can't even believe this journey. It's amazing. So you're getting a master's. I've never heard of that degree. You said it's called nonprofit management or something like that?
Nonprofit management and leadership. It's directly to teach you exactly how to run a nonprofit, how to be the executive director of a nonprofit.
Wow. Is it overwhelming? Because you have other
I
kids?
love to learn. So, well, no, I love to learn. And I feel like, um, honestly, I have to stay busy. I have to stay busy because my mind will always take me back to that moment of finding her. And I feel like I'm always stuck in that moment of me and her just being in that moment together, finding her. And if I'm not busy, my mind can do terrible things to me. So being busy helps me to keep going.
And I'd love to hear if you at any point, because a lot of people that have health insurance, it's still and sadly a lot of health insurance providers don't have mental health support. So I'm curious, over the last 5 years since your daughter passed, did you have access to like therapists or yes or no? And did you take advantage of it? Like, did you ever go like one-on-one or into group therapy to help you? Or no, like, because some people find it very helpful and then some people never go. And I'd love to hear if that was available to you.
Yeah, thankfully, um, well, I had insurance at the time, but my husband didn't. But thankfully, we were approached by homicide survivors and the Pima County victims advocates, and they provide funding for people to get in, I mean, to get counseling when stuff like this happens. So we did go to counseling. That was the very first time in his life my husband had ever went to counseling, but it helped us in so many ways. Me, my husband, and my son went to family counseling together because it was devastating. It could have, broke us completely if we didn't have the right coping mechanism. So yeah, we did go to counseling, and we also went to like support groups through homicide survivors where we went and we talked with other homicide survivors who we just shared how we felt. And it was very comforting to have people who could kind of relate to what we were going through.
Do you still go or not? Not so much now, just like a temporary thing.
Um,
Still reach out and
every once in a while I do, but I find that it kind of throws me into a depression if I'm not in the right, like if I'm not already sad, then I shouldn't go. So if I'm in that sadness where I'm having a hard week, then yes, I'll go for support. But if I'm doing okay that day, then I won't go.
you know what I'd love to ask because everybody responds differently to support. So some people, I had a brother who died. It was like 32 years ago, and it was just an accident. It wasn't, violent. But I loved it when people called, came around. I loved it so much. the support. I wanted to be with people 24/7. That's how I got, because nights when I would hit the pillow, I mean, I feel like I cried every night for 2 years. It was because that's when I was alone with my thoughts at nighttime. During
Yeah.
the day, I'd go to school and work, and people would call and friends. But I have two brothers, and they pretty much didn't want to talk about it, wanted to be left alone. They didn't like it when people, and I'm curious, like, because sometimes people, I know from my own experience, like sometimes you wonder, like, God, they haven't even called, how could they not?
Yeah.
But then you hear other people say, well, like, I don't know what to say. What did you find? Like, how do you call someone after their child's murder? I mean, you could say, I love you, I'm here for you, but sometimes they just don't know what. So how was your response to people reaching out, and your husband's, and was it different, and your children? Like, did you love it when people called and came by, or were you like, just leave? Well, you said you couldn't get out of bed for several months, but do you and also, like, do you like people to bring, because my mom and me, up until the time she passed, so for the last 30 years, we talked about my brother Alan often. I didn't want to forget about him, but my dad and my other two brothers, like, never brought him up in 30 years. So men and women, I think they process things, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that kind of thing. Like, do you like it when people bring her up and talk about her, or is it just a knife in the heart, like, yeah, all of those things? I know it's a lot.
So first off, I just want to say I'm sorry about your mom and your brother. Um, so one of the things that I noticed, when it first happened, I was so out of my mind that I didn't even really, like, I was a zombie. I didn't think about anything. But I realized that with losing a child, people don't give as much um comfort and support to dads as they do to moms. Every time somebody came, and they all meant well, and I love each and every one of them. And I hold no ill feelings towards any of them, but I just noticed they would tell my husband, "Oh, take care of her. Oh, just make sure she's okay." There was very rarely people that would say, "I'm very sorry for your loss. I hope you're doing okay," and checking on him. It was all about me. So
Wow.
that was one thing that I noticed about that. Um, his work, he had to take time off to go to court and to go to counseling. And I guess one day he went into the bathroom and he was in there for a long time because he was crying. He had a breakdown, and they threatened to write him up. So he came home and he said, "I can't do this no more. I can't work there. They don't understand what I'm going through, and they're not being supportive. And how am I supposed to?" He loved his job before that. So it was a big deal. I realized, like, yeah, that they must not be being supportive. So he quit because he couldn't do it. He had to take a lot of time off work, and which is good because he needed it. And when it first happened, he was taking care of me. This man, I had given up on life. I quit eating completely. And he would come home from lunch every day and force me to drink broth. Like, he would make sure every day that I was taken care of so I wouldn't die. And that takes strength right there. So when he decided to quit, I supported him 100%. Like, yeah, we can do this. Whatever you need, we're going to adjust. But when people I never stopped and thought about, like how people just show up for you when someone you love dies. And I remember, like, the next night after everything happened, my house was just full of people. All my family, people, my family that came from 2 hours away, and it was a beautiful feeling. They brought us food. They talked to us. No one ever really talked about my daughter because, as you say, people get awkward and they don't know what to say, and that's okay. you know and I highly recommend, if you don't know what to say, just don't say anything at all. Just be there and say, "I'm here for you. I'm here to listen." Because I've had some people tell me some things that really offended me, like, "Oh, at least you have your two other kids," or just things that were like, "What?" Or another person was like, "Well, at least she didn't live with you anymore." I'm like, "What is that even?" It's like, okay, thank you. It's like, what? But and I
Yeah.
try to, like, to be compassionate and know that it's an awkward experience. It really, really is. So you just share your love and let them know, I don't know what to say, but I'm here and I love you. And if you want to help somebody, saying, well, if you need anything, let me know. That's not gonna, when people kept telling me that, I didn't even know what I needed myself. So I have my cousin Frances, who is the most amazing woman ever, who instead of saying, if you need anything, let me know, would show up with food like for like months after everything happened. She would bring us food. She would come over and just talk to us, like make sure that we were doing the everyday things that we needed to do, like paying our bills and things like that, because those are things that you don't even care about in that moment. So she was like part of our backbone during that time. And, I hope she knows how much she means to me and that I would do anything for her now, because she was the one part of the reason why we held it together while we were falling apart. And we hadn't even really talked that much before everything happened. And now she's like one of the closest people to me.
I love it. And she's your cousin?
Yeah, she's my oldest cousin.
Does she live there in Arizona with you? Yeah.
Yeah, she lives in my city too. Yeah.
Beautiful. How about your faith in God? Like, I don't know if you are a church goer or believe in God. I'd love to. I'm curious. And then because for many people, a belief in God gets them through these like darkest moments in our life. And I know, well, kind of like what you were saying, sometimes things can sting. People would when my brother died, because he was 27, it was a motorcycle accident. So even family members every now and then people would say, because he was very faithful. We grew up Mormon, so he was like a returned missionary, very into church and loved God, very strong faith. But I remember as we were leaving his memorial service, my cousin Diana saying something like, and even my older brother, they were really mad at God and like, how can you even believe? Why would he take him? These kinds of things. And we hear that anytime somebody nice goes. And I wasn't mad at God because I have a really strong faith, and I just thought he needed him. It's his time, it's I missed him. I still miss him. 32, 33 years later, I think of him every day. But I wasn't mad at God. But a lot of people would say things to me like that, like, it's not fair. And yeah, why would you even, Alan was so into church, and there's all these bad people in the world that are still here. I mean, I still, people I think say these things and they don't mean to sting, but what are your thoughts on that? Because I've often wondered when I see, because we have a lot of mass shootings in this country, right? Like almost every month, sometimes every week. And you see these little kids or kids of all age or family members, and I have not lost anyone to that yet, but I think when I see these parents on TV, I think, I wonder if they ever like have a happy day again, or they sad like every day for the rest of their life. Can they? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on all these things, like your spiritual, if you are a spiritual person, and if like, were you mad at God? If you do believe in God, were you mad at him for a while? Because my mom was pretty mad at God for a couple years. Like she was pretty mad at God. I mean, yeah, I think she stopped going to church, and that's okay. I mean, she didn't she changed her heart. She had a change of heart, but for a couple years she did feel that way. Like, how could you let this happen, kind of thing. How about you?
Well, Rosaura was very, very into like she went to church. She was a like an altar girl growing up because my in-laws are really into the Catholic Church. Me and my husband got married through the church, but we were just more of go to church every once in a while. And I was a bitter person back then. I was a bitter person. I had a rough upbringing, and I carried that chip on my shoulder. So I never really thought about God. It was just there in the back of my mind. But um the moment that I found Rosaura, as a parent, my first instinct to when I see my child is hurt, I want to hold them. So I hugged my daughter. And some people say that it was disassociation, but it was an out of body experience that I had in that moment. And I was looking down from the corner of the room, seeing me holding Risada's body. And in that moment, there was a war inside of me of that rage that I had felt my whole life, that I felt like the world owed me something, and the need to change. And I felt this presence, this warm presence just engulf me totally and made me feel if I didn't let go of that bitterness and leave that room and be different and do different, I would never see her again.
Mm.
So I believe in God. I believe that He was there in that moment and He gave me the strength that I needed to keep going. Because, there's a lot of people that would have saw what I saw in that moment and would have went and just totally ended it right then and there for themselves. And, I talk about this a lot when I do news reports, but no one ever shows it. And I understand people are uncomfortable with it, but yes, I feel like there's so much more, that we have a creator and he's there. There was so many things that have happened to us since that day that has just solidified my belief in there being more to what we are than what we think we are. I truly feel like we are connected to every other person in this world, because we're all an energy that's a oneness, and that's what I felt in that moment. And I did tell you I don't talk about the person very much because I don't want to. But even with him, I will feel a connection. And even with him, there are things that I see that other people wouldn't be thinking about because they're too busy focusing on the hatred they have for him. But to me, there's always going to be a side of me that is compassionate with every single person, no matter what they've done, because they're a part of me because of whatever it was that happened that night. So yes, I'm a very faithful person. I don't go to church, but I do believe in my higher power, and I'm very spiritual about it, and I'll never deny it. I love my creator.
I love it. That's beautiful. And I appreciate this very real and vulnerable. I love it. And I'm not going to cut it out of this interview. I think it's the best part of the interview. Do you ever feel no, because I mean we're all human. I mean, I don't care what your status is in life, how much money you have, your race. There's some emotions. We all have families. We all have parents. Most people have kids. People get sick. No one's immune from a life of from some kind of pain in their life. And a lot of times they just don't share. There's lots of people that are losing their children. Do you ever feel, and if she was a person of faith, like you said, she had a very strong faith and I mean, the whole message of the Bible and most is forgiveness and redemption. It's not so easy, that's a hard one and it takes time. I think I sent you in a list of questions. There was a mass shooting last year, or maybe just in the last few months on the East Coast. It was like I think it was at a bowling alley. Anyway, there was a lot of deaf kids. It was really, sad. Well, they're all sad. But one of the people being interviewed on the news, and he had just lost his son, like in the last couple days, his grown son. And he was like, he could barely talk, but he's like, I just can't hate the man. I can't hate him. I can't hate him. I'm a Christian. I cannot hate him. I know he was the man, the shooter, but I was on my couch thinking, how can he? I've never seen someone be able to say this so soon. I mean, but he was so filled with the love of God. Like God's not going to want me to hate him. God's not. But in that moment, do you ever feel your daughter's presence? I know that's kind of new agey. Some
Oh,
people say they do, some people don't.
yes,
You feel it?
yes. And I could even share some experiences that we've had, if you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, we
Um,
have, but yeah, yeah. If you're comfortable, yeah, I'd love to hear
so
because some people feel their loved ones,
yeah,
and I always ask people. I feel my dad and mom, and sometimes I feel my brother, but some people are like, no, I never feel 'em."
yeah. So the night that everything happened, after we came home and everything was about 3 or 4 in the morning, me and my husband were laying down in bed and we were just crying. I had turned my phone on silent and put it on the dresser across the room. And when my phone's on silent, it doesn't make any noise at all. Well, it started to take pictures over and over and over again. When Rosada was alive, if I put my phone down anywhere, she would pick it up and take selfies of herself. and she would just like make funny faces in these selfies. And it just kept taking pictures over and over again. And I said, my first thought was, oh my gosh, it's her. And I said, Wasada, I said, it's okay. I said, we're gonna be okay. You need to go be with God. And it stopped. And I went and I picked up the phone and there was 5 pictures and a video. And it's just darkness because my room was completely dark. And the video, I don't know if it was me just crying, but you could hear a female voice in the video. And it might have just been me, but it did it all by itself. And then like months later, me and my husband were sitting in my living room and I have blackout curtains on my sliding door. So it's like really dark in our living room. And we were just sitting there in the darkness because yeah, I don't know. That's what we did back then. We were just so lost that we just would sit there together and just cry. And all of a sudden, the curtain opened like if somebody was looking out, and then it slowly shut. And I thought, no, that didn't happen. So I didn't say anything. And my husband turns around and says, are we just going to act like that didn't happen? Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, well, yeah, it did happen, but I don't know what it was, and it's so weird. You don't know how to like analyze it and think about it. And then my son has seen her in our hallway. And it's just, when my grandson was born and he was about a year old, he started talking to the girl in the hallway and he would tell me about the girl in the hallway and he'd be laughing with the girl in the hallway. And so um as he got older, I started to tell him more about her. And one day he told me, he says, she was the girl in the hallway, yeah, yeah. And I'm just like, oh, it was beautiful and it was strange because I never believed in anything like that. Even now I'm like, nah, that's weird. That didn't happen. But it did. And it's just weird for the mind to process.
Well, I do. Well, my beliefs, are that we were somewhere before we came and that we go somewhere. Our like that this earthly phase is just temporary. We get a body, but that our spirits do. So and I have heard many stories like that where loved ones have seen them, and it's comforting. I had something just it was. I mean, it was like 13 years ago when my dad passed. So my brother was the first to go, then my grandma, then dad, then mom. But all three of my mother, my dad, and my grandma on their deathbed have said that like, and they're usually on morphine or something, and they'll say, Alan's here. I see Alan. And my dad, I was next to his bed, and it really like he had been like unresponsive for a week, but he was reaching out and he was saying Alan. Well, he had said Alan a few times. Well, that was the last thing I saw him do before he became unresponsive. But because I was pretty much by his bed 24/7, and it was so comforting to me, April. I just thought Alan's here. Alan's here to pick him up. Because mom's years later, and grandma said she hadn't mentioned Alan in many, many years because he died so long ago. And then she was like, my dad was sitting next to her, and she's like, Alan's here, and it's just so comforting. I know there's people who think all of this stuff is silly, but I don't. I don't at all. I
Yeah.
think, yeah. Is there anything else like you want to share? Well, the name of your nonprofit and how people can reach you. I don't remember if you have a website. If you do, I'll add it to when I edit this interview. But how can people reach out to you? And it sounds like you're very open to that. And I'm just so grateful that you joined us. I'm sorry about how we met, but it's a beautiful all the things that you're doing to heal and help others. It's just and how it just kind of like you said, I have a GED, and you go and get a bachelor's, and now you're a master's, like running a nonprofit. Who would have, we surprise ourselves, right? Like what you're capable of. I'm sure when you were a teenager, you were never thinking if someone said, 15 years from now, you're going to be running a nonprofit helping women possibly around the country or the world, you would have been like,
Yeah.
not gonna,
I wish.
not gonna happen.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so they can reach us at www.justice and then the number 4 rosauda.org, or they can find us on Facebook and it's Stay Strong and then the number 4 Rosauda.
You're strong. All right. I'll be sure to add you on my social channels. Like if is there anything else you want to mention that I might have left out? Like, oh, I am kind of curious. Like, do you ever keep do any of her friends keep in touch with you, or like do you ever know how they're, because I know that as my when my brother first passed, it was right, he was 27, so that's right around the time people are getting married and having kids. So as the years went on, every time somebody got married or had a kid, they'd send an invitation or an announcement to my mom, and I loved it, but it just kind of was like a knife in the heart to her because she would be like, Alan didn't get to have any of these moments. But as the years went by, like I loved it when people, even now, people that were close to him, it kind of is like a connection to him still, or they're still in our lives. Like, is there anybody that was in her life that's still in your life, like her friends and things like that?
Yeah, yeah. Oh goodness. So many people reached out to me when everything happened, and she was friends with so many people from so many different walks of life. And thankfully, all of them were so impacted by her and loved her so much that they continue to talk to me. And it's so strange because one of the last things that she ever posted on Facebook, like a month before that everything happened, I think it was, it said, if anything ever happens to me, please take care of my mom. That's what it said. It was just something that she randomly shared, and they took it to heart, and they're always checking on me and, checking on my husband. And it's nice to, it does make me sad that she didn't get to experience things, but I'm happy to see them getting married and having kids and growing up. It's a beautiful thing. And I like to think that they could, because she was somebody that they would call for support, for advice, for just to be there for, that when they still need that support and advice and guidance, they call me now. And it's I have some big shoes to fill because she was such an amazing young lady, but I try my hardest to be there for them just like she would.
Okay. Well, this has been one of my most favorite interviews in the last year and a half.
Thank you.
Well, it's just very raw and real and sad and happy, a lot, kind of all of the gamut of emotions, April. And I wish you the best, and I'll stay in touch, and I'll definitely let you know when we're going to air this and send it to you. And if you ever have anything else you want to talk about, please reach out. We can have another discussion.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us for another episode of American Mood Swings, where we talk about the brain and all things mental health. Hope to see you next week, and please share with your friends.